Here's a brief video about a trailer that I built, and this trailer is made out of square aluminum tubing, so it's 2-inch square with 1/4-inch walls, and then I have some other 1/4-inch aluminum plate. And as you can see, the corners here, I drilled 3/4-inch holes. There's a plate on top and on bottom. And then I put these brass inserts in these in the 3/4-inch holes, and then a 1/2-inch stainless bolts go through the brass inserts. Here I'm trying to get some plastic things I put in just as placeholders. I'm trying to get them out, so that was kind of a mistake to put those in. Made it a little more difficult. But anyway, and then I also have these angle irons that I use to connect the tongue part to the frame. And that was a little bit of a hassle to get the angle irons connected. That's probably the hardest part of just the frame setup. But anyway, got all that put together and bolted. And then this is probably the most trickiest part. So I have these swing arm things that I want to use to connect the wheels to the frame. And so I have a larger tube, also a square tube, but I think it has a 1/2-inch wall. And I need to cut the bottom off so that it's just a U shape. And then I need to cut it like a semicircle in the side, and my saw is terrible, or saw blade is terrible here. So I end up mostly drilling a bazillion holes in it in the shape that I want, and then I just saw a little bit to connect the holes together, and then remove the parts I don't want, and then finish it with an angle grinder and file and so on. You'll see the shape here start to take the shape here in just a second. So this is the semicircle part I was talking about. On each side I want a semicircle, and eventually here I get enough holes drilled and I can put the saw in there, and I didn't show you that, but I cut it in there. You can see it's loose and it's just about to come out. Once I get that off, then I have to finish it with the angle grinder and some other stuff. This is a little bit out of order here, so I've already removed the part and I already did the angle grinding and finished it a little bit, but now the swing arm doesn't quite fit. It's a little bit too wide, just maybe a couple millimeters too wide, so I have to get the angle grinder in there, and this is really a hassle. This was definitely the most tedious part. Get the angle grinder and do some filing, and eventually I get it to fit. But again, that was really tedious. And this is before I did the finishing, so it's kind of the crude shape, and then I angle grind and finished it. And then I cut a couple holes, or drilled a couple holes in it to where it's going to attach to the frame, and there it is, just sitting on the frame. Now, I did things a little bit out of order, unfortunately, and so I had the frame all assembled and couldn't really get the drill press in there conveniently. So I drilled these holes by hand, which if I had to do over again, I wouldn't do because it's a little more error prone. But it did work, and I think it's pretty solid and was very straight and everything it needed to be. So that worked out well in the end. And there it is attached. You can see what it looks like attached, and there's a hole through for the axle that's going to hold the swing arms on. And here's the tongue part. Oh, and I made a mistake, right? I made it a little too wide, so I ended up having to take it apart anyway. So I took it apart, shortened the width a little bit. Now I'm just putting it back together, and here you can see the wheels, how they're attached, and the shocks and spring assembly, how that's on there. And I'll have a little more to say about that later. But anyway, there I'm getting it put back together. Yeah, okay, enough of that. Getting it all put back together, and there it is with the tongue. Oh, and I have to reattach the tongue. And again, that's kind of the most difficult part, getting those angle irons lined up and getting the holes drilled in just the right place. But very doable. Okay, so you can see there's the tongue, and yeah, I'm getting that reassembled. And again, you can kind of see the wheels attached there, the swing arms, and the shocks, spring assembly. Okay, and there it is all put together, except no fenders or lights on it yet. That's basically it. And there's a two-piece tongue, and then I just put pegs in there to hold it together, and there's a little roller that goes in front. That's the assembly that it fits on, and there's the roller. And here is the fenders and lights, and when I take the tongue off, it's very compact and fits in a small space. Okay, so the build part of the video is pretty much over. I thought now I would just go over some things that I would do differently if I was to build it again. Wing arms that hold the wheels on, and these are pretty pricey, and they come apart here. They're really pretty cool the way they work and everything, but to me it's unnecessary. I don't really need that. So if I was to do it again, I would just use a solid piece of aluminum here. 2-inch square tube, same size as this tube here, but solid, or at least thicker walled than the 1/4 inch. But I don't think you can find thicker wall unless you go solid. So probably a solid piece of aluminum here. And it would be much easier to attach if it was the same size as this, the same width as this here. And another thing that didn't show up very well in the video was how these are attached. And so they're getting the alignment right here is a little bit tricky, so I had to put a little spacing here. And I put this extra support here to add a little bit more bracing, because there's obviously a lot of pressure on this. It seems to work just fine this way. And I would not buy these as well. You can buy motorcycle shocks on Amazon for a lot cheaper than you can get these, and I think they would work just fine. Too much about the fender, but it's just a piece of ABS plastic cut in half and painted, and super cheap, and it actually works really well, so I would keep that. The wheels, I would probably buy these wheels still. They're kind of pricey, but they're very nice, so maybe go with those unless you can find some good motorcycle wheels you could use instead. Now here's a big one. So I bought these expensive brass inserts. So I drilled 3/4 inch holes, put the brass inserts in, and then put 1/2 inch stainless bolts through. I think 1/2 inch is overkill, and I would just do away with these. I don't think these serve any real purpose. I would just put 1/2 inch, 3/8 inch bolts straight through. Just drill 3/8 inch holes and put the 3/8 inch bolts through. And I would probably, 3/8 I think is just plenty. 1/2 is probably overkill. So 3/8 inch bolts should do the trick. Attachment, this roller, and then the lights. Those are really the only things that you would need to buy, other than, the stainless and the bolts to hold it together, and a few other small odds and ends. Okay, so lots of things are held together with these pins. So I have these clothespins going through, so I can take it apart and lift that off, and it separates here, right? So I can, separate the tongue, and that's very nice to have. But I wanted stainless hairpins here, right? So I want everything to be stainless if possible. So I want these stainless hairpins, but they do slip, they can slip out, so I put a wire around them to make sure they don't. Okay, so there is such a thing as a locking hairpin, so it has like a little extra turn in it there, so it doesn't slip out on its own. But I can't seem to find those in stainless, so I went with these. If I could find those in stainless, I would go with those. It would look a little cleaner without those wires in there. Other than that, I think the tongue attachment here is pretty nice. You could do this with just one long piece if you never want to take the tongue off. But here I could also extend it if I wanted to. If I need a couple of extra feet, I could, instead of using a 6-foot piece here, I could put an 8-foot piece. In fact, I might actually do that. That's about all I can think of.